It's cut inside. Saka! Sublime finish! He's back with a bang with Bukayo Saka, 1-0. Unbelievable skill.
Hey, look, the Vini rumors may not be trending in the right direction, but at least Kepa's trying to make Meslier look like the signing of the summer. This is the ArsenalVision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith, Blackman, Twitter, Yank Gunner. Hello, everybody. Bit of an unusual podcast for you today. Andrew and I, Arsblog, are together in Dublin. We're going to spend a couple of days together following the game last night and our event at the Sugar Club, which was sensational and everybody was lovely. And thank you for being there. Just a wonderful night, despite how rumors are shaping up right now and the performance at the Aviva. But so we are jointly doing the podcast together. So what you're going to get is a conversation between myself and Andrew that will also be the Arscast today, and it'll be our podcast today as well. Clive and Paul did an instant reaction, so that's out there. If you want to go vote for Stocks Rising and Stocks Falling in the app, you can do that. As a reminder, the iOS app is out. You can now do full Patreon integration there, and we're doing our best to make that enjoyable. It has the Apple Watch app and everything like that. The Android one will be ready just as soon as Google hires someone to review it. We will continue to do all the normal stuff. So even though I'm gone, there'll be an instant reaction again on Sunday, and then I'm back Sunday evening. So back to regular scheduled content. The other thing is, if you are someone who is usually inclined to watch this stuff video-wise on Spotify or YouTube, there will be no video of this. It'll just be a still image. So, a bit of a slap-together podcast, but we do cover the game at the Aviva. We do cover the Vinny Jr. rumors, some defensive reinforcement rumors, who could come in instead of Vinny. So lots of stuff still to discuss and lots of good stuff to come. So again, met a lot of great people here in Dublin. As always, when Arsenal people come together, that's wonderful. Even if the stuff around the football, both on the pitch and related to transfers in the last 24, 48 hours hasn't been ideal. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew and myself. We'll give you a bit of a podcast. I'll come back to say goodbye at the end. But until then, love you. And here's the pod.
Okay, with me today in studio, in Ireland, in Dublin, in my house. I don't need to go any deeper than that. Elliot Smith. Good morning, Elliot.
The podcast is coming from inside the house.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. So, yeah, how's your Ireland experience been so far?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, the show that we did at the Sugar Club was fantastic. People have been lovely. Got a chance to meet a lot of people, and it's nice to be here, not feeling like I have to hop on a plane and go, so I can kind of settle in,
sure,
enjoy it. I think we've been reasonably fortunate with the weather, giving us a chance to walk around. It was lovely during the game, if the game itself wasn't lovely. So yeah, so far so good.
So far so good. So we should say for Arscast and ArsenalVision Podcast listeners, this will be quite a similar episode because Arsenal were obviously in town last night playing Real Betis at the Aviva Stadium at Lansdowne Road. That's what it should be called. That was the old name of the stadium. So for convenience sake, you're here, I'm here, we're doing this podcast. So it's going to be pretty similar for both. So a little apology if you're looking for two distinct podcasts today, but it being what it is.
Yeah. So on the version we put out on the ArsenalVision channel, like all of my opinions will be better. And then on yours, your opinions will be better. But otherwise, mostly identical.
Yeah, so listen, we were there. We were at the game yesterday. There was a nice buzz around town, a nice buzz around Dublin. We were in a pub called Toner's on Bagot Street, which is quite close to the stadium, packed full of Arsenal fans from all over Ireland. That's the great thing about this particular country is that, even if you are a little bit relatively far away from Dublin, you can make the trip and come and see the Arsenal. It was brilliant to see so many fans, pre-game. And, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, a lot of buzz, a lot of, families and kids and that kind of stuff, which I guess makes, what happened in the game a bit of a shame. But you can see from the fact that this was a preseason game, I guess in sort of peak holiday period as well. And that stadium was sold out. I did like the stadium announcer. Maybe my favorite bit, apart from the fiddle battle before the start. There was a literal fiddle battle before the start of the game where two young ladies had a fiddle off, and that sounds much worse than I mean it to be. They were literally playing fiddles, people. But there was a moment towards the end of the game where the stadium announcer came on. He was all very excited. He was like, "And tonight's attendance, ladies and gentlemen, is," and on the screen, all the numbers went, and he just went, Sold out.
It didn't give us a number.
Give us the fucking number.
Yeah.
What's the number?
And what's weirder is on the screen, the numbers went to all zeros. Went to like 5 zeros. And then he just said, sold out.
Sold out.
Yeah.
Tonight's attendance is full. I wish they could have told us. But look, the stadium was full and there was a great deal of buzz around. The team was, I think, the same team that started against Girona. So a certain level of seriousness from Mikel Arteta in that regard.
Yeah, I think, look, we can get into the parts of the game that weren't thrilling or particularly effective.
Sure.
But like, it is a fitness exercise at this stage of preseason. It will be a truncated preseason, but you could see he tried to ramp up the minutes. He took the same group. He gave them a bit more time on the pitch than expected. It was nice to see the Gabbies, Martinelli and Big Gabby back in the squad and able to be a part of it. But it's so interesting, right? Because the game kicks off and within a minute or two, we're in with a chance for a goal. Gyökeres has a good chance, and I thought, oh, we're just going to destroy Betis, and it's going to be another rollicking time for the preseason, and that was sort of the highlight of the game.
Yeah, it didn't really turn out that way. We've just watched a replay of the Gyökeres chance here because we were sort of pretty much at pitch level. Really nice seats, so we got a really good view of Hector in the second half, rocking that tash, rocking that. I don't know if it's quite a mullet because he's also got the hair at the sides, but he's got the long hair and the tash, and what a great guy. I'm sure people have read the interview he did with Sid Lowe while he was here in Dublin. Just comes across as a brilliant dude, Hector. So that was maybe the most exciting part of the second half. But we didn't get a real chance to see that Gyökeres chance. We saw it in real time, but it was up the other end and it was hard to sort of parse exactly what had happened. I mean, I think it's a pretty good chance. One of those where maybe you just need to move your feet a little bit quicker and get the shot off a step earlier and you have a better chance of scoring.
Yeah, it seems like he wants it set up for himself perfectly. He wants it just right on his right foot so he can strike it the way he wants. And so he takes a few more extra steps to kind of prepare himself to strike it. And I think in general, if there's something maybe he can work on this season is just getting his shots off more quickly. Obviously in Portugal, both with his strength and his pace and the level of defending there, I think he could get the shot just how he wants it on his right foot in the positions he wants it. When he does that, kind of as we saw at the San Siro, he can score beautiful goals. But as we know at the top level last season, there were a number of games he just didn't get shots off, period. And I think that's largely down to needing the ball more comfortably where he wants it to strike it. So this was a case of a couple extra steps, and by the time he did get his shot away, the chance was a bit gone. Yeah.
Like you say, though, early in preseason, and hopefully that's something that can improve, as the summer goes on. This might be a bit of a hot take, right? And I know
leave that to me.
I know that's your territory, but this might be a bit of a hot take. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure I rate this Kepa guy that highly.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at how we do when he plays, it's really this simple. He makes errors and we lose. Now, correlation is not causation, but I think in this case, it may be a combination of correlation and causation. Again, for their corner, when they scored their first goal, we didn't totally see what happened from our pitch level vantage point, but it took one quick scan of socials to just see Kepa exclamation point repeated over and over again. So I think it is fair to say that he was at fault there and at fault for their second as well. So
you weren't particularly impressed with the save that led to the corner. You felt he should have pushed it a bit wider, which I think, having watched it again at the time, I was thinking it was quite breezy and quite windy, and I was thinking, well, yeah, it could have been moving around. Mosquera put it behind for a corner. I guess you're right, though. If he pushes that wider, Mosquera has a chance to just boot that up the pitch rather than behind for a corner.
Palms it directly back in front of him. If anyone on Betis is taking a risk, making a run, it's right there for them. So no, I thought that was really poor. Obviously, the kick out for the second goal is really poor. I still haven't actually seen either of their goals from outside the box, which I think were good strikes. And to Mikel Arteta's credit, he gave credit to Betis for scoring a couple of good goals, but for the most part, we made 3 errors, 2 by the goalkeeper, 1 by Kai, and all the goals come from those mistakes. Yeah,
I like James's. James was doing the live updates for The Athletic, and he wrote, "There is no man's land. There is absolutely no man's land. And then there is wherever Kepa ended up when that corner dropped into the 6-yard box. Like, he came for it and was like not even in the same postcode at all."
I do think like the best thing that could have happened for Meslier is what's happened in the first 2 preseason games, though, because if you think about it, when he was signed, he was the first signing. People want, an exciting attacker, and people kind of did what they do when you sign a backup keeper. They got kind of annoyed about it, and he's terrible, and why are we signing him? But we've had 2 preseason games. He's been faultless and actually pretty good in both preseason games. And the guy who is our current backup has been an absolute train wreck. So if anything, Mellier's come up in people's estimation, and maybe people see why we've gone for him.
Well, yeah, you could even say his stock is rising by virtue of...
I would say that in our app.
Yeah. A good plug for the app there. Yeah, good for you. No, I think you're right, though, to an extent, and he did make a good save in the second half, Meslier.
Yeah.
The second goal, I think, this is just a bad kick from Kepa. I think it's Max Dowman who plays the ball back to him. He should launch that downfield. That's how you do it. You get the ball upfield, you get organised. He just sort of spooned it up in the air towards the Betis left wing. They played it inside. It is an absolutely brilliant strike. It's an unbelievable hit from outside the box. But as much as we might be focused on the goalkeeper, I'm absolutely certain that when that goal is analysed and when Mikel Arteta looks at that goal, he's going to have a quick word with Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri for not quite closing down quickly enough. The attempts to close down were a bit half-hearted. Like, I think pretty much every goalkeeper gets beaten by that shot, but Arteta's contention will be he had too much time and space to get that shot away in the first place.
To be fair, I think it's hard to pick nits with how we defend because we've been defensively the best team in England for a number of years now. But if you wanted to say something that happens maybe with a little too much regularity, I think players are able to get clear shots away at the top of the box against us every once in a while, a little bit too much, that we are guilty of sitting off or the midfielders not following a man into that space. So I think if you're a manager in preseason, in addition to wanting a fitness exercise, you want to see some good things that you're working on succeed, but maybe you want to see a few issues that you can point out and have on film that you can show to the players and say, this is where we need to be better. I think, Mikel even said it in his post-match comments that if you're going to concede 3, you'd rather concede them in a game that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That isn't a competitive fixture. So some things to work on there for sure, though. Yeah.
It was a mistake. 3 mistakes. We got goal back through Piero Hincapié, header from a corner, and then Kai Havertz gave the ball away, and listen, they move it very well. Kepa's rooted to the spot. I don't know that there's a great deal really he can do about that one in particular, but it never looks good for a keeper when you don't move.
Yeah.
It's one of those, it could have cracked off the bottom of the post. He gets away with it, but...
What I can't see is like if they gave him the eyes or if it was through legs, like I just didn't see it from that angle, and it's preseason, so I haven't searched it out again. But what I would say is that yes, there's a change of possession, but there's enough time for him to be set and ready to try to save a shot. And when you don't even make an effort to get to it, it's not fantastic.
No. So look, 3-1 down at halftime, and not the script that people would have written for this one. And it really did kind of have an impact on the atmosphere and the sort of what it was like in the stadium. It was a bit like nobody's going mad or upset, but there wasn't really the buzz that you would have hoped. If Arsenal score a few goals, everyone gets a bit excited. There was a very drunk guy in front of us who sat there with most of the curry sauce on the curry chips that he got on his face, dripping down his chin. Then he sat there asking people to light his cigarette, which nobody did. And he was also sitting in the wrong seat beside a quite uncomfortable young lady who had to get him to move when her boyfriend or her partner came back.
When her partner came back, the drunk gentleman asked for a high five from her, and it looked like the way you might touch a public toilet. She gave him a high five in a way that suggested she wanted the least amount of her hand to make contact with his hand.
Then he just stood up in front of everybody until, we had to ask him very politely to sit down. He wasn't troublesome per se, but he was certainly, I'm not sure he will have remembered too much of that second half. Fitness exercise, as you say, and that's primarily what this point of preseason is about. So Gabriel Martinelli getting some minutes at the start of the second half, that's them sort of being eased back into action.
Yeah, good to see that. I will just point out, Christos Solis was on the opposite side from us and having a pretty low angle to the game. I didn't get a great feel for his performance, but it's another good corner delivery. Our goal comes from his corner delivery. It's an excellent delivery, and it just sort of makes you wonder. It's hard to get much better than Declan Rice is, and I'm not saying he's going to take Rice off corners, but if he's playing and Rice is playing in a game and he can deliver a corner like that, getting Rice in the box wouldn't hurt.
Or you've got another corner taker when Rice isn't there, because it's generally been Saka or Rice or Madueke.
We haven't had the best corners from the left-hand side when Rice isn't there. So great delivery from Solis. And from what I gather, he did reasonably well. I mean, he had a good chance that he didn't take. But otherwise, I think a reasonable couple of games from him that are encouraging. Yeah,
we were looking at Max Dowman, obviously, first half because he was in front of us. Mm-hmm. I did take my eyes off Ben White once in a while to have a look at Max. I think what's fascinating about Max is that the talent is there, the potential is there, the raw ingredients are so obvious to everybody. But there were a couple of moments where you could see the rawness, and that's completely normal for a 16-year-old. I think there was one where Ben White had made the run outside, and Max should have played the pass, first time. But he does love to take people on. It's part of what makes him such a good and exciting player. But I think not the conclusion, but perhaps what we were talking about more was, at 16 years of age, which is the thing people reference around him all the time, the physical development it's really weird to me how you can see a player, the season ends, they go away and have essentially 6 weeks holidays, and then they come back and they just sort of look bigger. It's happened before. It happened with Jack Wilshere. It's happened with Ethan and Miles to an extent as well. That they have this growth spurt that happens every year between sort of the 1st of June and mid-July when they come back. Maybe we have our own special doctors. I don't quite know, but that was obvious yesterday with Max, wasn't it? That he just looks more physically developed.
I can't speak from experience. From what I understand, 16 is a normal age for a growth spurt for others. Look, it may not have been as exciting a game for him as the one against Girona, but what I will say is, if you think there's a chance that Max will be starting or at least playing minutes in games that matter early this season, which is in play, that could happen. And you're Mikel Arteta. Max can beat a man off the dribble. He can score a goal. He can provide an assist. But what you need to know is that he can do the other things on the pitch that you must do to win football matches. And I think the best part of his performance last night was the way he I know this is so Arteta-pilled what I'm saying, but the way he tracked back, he took the ball off Betis players at times, he recovered the ball well, gave it, and then allowed us to turn defending into attacking. So, because I think fundamentally what he can do in the attacking part of the game is beyond question. He can impact the game there, but can he contribute at the other end of the pitch in the way you need to if you're going to start in the Premier League? And I think he showed that he's up for that part of the game as well, which is important.
Yes. So second half, you have players like Gabriel and Gabriel Martinelli, for whom those minutes are useful. You also have Gabriel Jesus, who missed a good chance. I think it was set up by Martinelli, and he put it wide of the post. But Gabriel, Jesus, Fabio Vieira, Reece Nelson, when we get the players back, when you get Rice and Odegaard and Eze and Madueke and Saka and these guys back in, players like that are even more surplus to requirements. I didn't mention Zubamendi and Marino as well, who are coming in. They're useful now because we need those sort of players on the pitch, but none of them did anything that would make you think, ooh, maybe the door is open very slightly for these guys.
Yeah, I'm sure you plan to mention. I think we can say, obviously, one of the most significant things that happened in the game that's unfortunate is Copley's injury, which was confirmed as not good. So that put a real damper on the second half because these academy kids, this is their chance to play. And I was going to say a number of people. I don't know the number of people. I just know a sold out number of people.
Sold out.
And the mechanism of injury didn't look good, and they were doing that stability test for the ACL, and obviously can't speculate on whether that's what it was, but Mikel after the match said it didn't look good. So that wasn't great. I mean, I do think Ibrahim looks good. Like, again, talk about physical development. Big, strong, tall-looking academy player. Looks very much at home in the center midfield. Marley Salmon, again, looks very comfortable in that area. But the quality of the game deteriorated. One thing I do think is worth pointing out, by the way, I don't think Betis made their first sub till like 70 minutes or so. I could be wrong about that, but they did not make a lot of subs.
No.
They're obviously further ahead in their preparation, took this game quite seriously, as you would. If you're the manager of Betis, you say, hey, I'm going against Arsenal. This is a chance to really test ourselves against top opposition to make sure we're ready for the season. I think they took that opportunity quite seriously, from what I could tell. I thought they were very organized. If anything, maybe it's good preparation for us to see an organized lower block that frustrated us and have some chances to work on that. So, I do think that when you play preseason and one team is quite a bit ahead of the other team in their physical preparation, that can make quite a big difference.
Am I right in thinking that somebody said it's their 6th preseason game, Betis?
Yeah, it might, because I know for Girona that was their 4th. So
right.
for Betis, 5th or 6th would make sense to me.
Yeah. And we are missing a lot of really, really good, important first team players.
I will say, right, like you can look at it and you can look at the midfield and Miles and Ethan are obviously very good players, but they're the youngest element of a very talented midfield that's gotten even more talented with Bruno Gyökeres coming now. And you can look at the players that weren't there, but I mean, I cannot help but look at the right side of our defense and think that is an area of immense concern going into the season, given the state of the fitness of the squad and who's available, because Timber, again, not in the squad. Saliba's going to be out for a while. It's Ben White and Mascara, who both started and are really, at this point, the only available first-team players for the right-hand side of our defense. That's pretty concerning, I would say, for a team that has an identity built on our defensive solidity.
An area of concern. Perhaps, I mean, more talks or more whispers that we're looking at Ezri Konsa. We were talking about him on the way down to the stadium, and you were, I'm not going to say more positive on him than I was, but in terms of making the case for the kind of player he is, Premier League ready, has played Champions League, he's 28 years of age, can play right back, can play centre half. I'm not a big fan, I have to say, of him as a player. I think as essentially a backup for when all the key players are available, it makes quite a bit of sense. What doesn't make sense to me are the figures that are being bandied around for him. I've seen talk of like 60, 70 million. And that, to me, seems absurd and ludicrous. And I know that's Villa holding out for the best possible fee that they can hold out for, and they're perfectly entitled to do that. I just don't think Arsenal should go anywhere near Ezri Konsa for that amount of money. But then the question becomes who and, when are you going to address this particular issue?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you, by the way. I think we're both aligned on the fact that a defender, for all the focus on Bruno Gyökeres and Vinicius Jr, which we'll talk about now in a moment, I absolutely agree that we need to bring in a defender. And if they had any designs, and I'm not sure they necessarily did, for Louis Copley to be sort of there or thereabouts as a potential right back backup, that's gone now. So I do think it is important that we bring in a defensive player. I just don't quite know how they solve that particular puzzle.
You said earlier that the hot takes are my responsibility. So I'll try out a take here that's just popped into my head that will probably be deeply unpopular, but I'm willing to own it.
Okay.
We were concerned about Saka's fitness going into last season. And the move we made in response to that was to spend 50+ million pounds on Nani Madueke. Okay? And you could argue that doing that was important and helped us win the title because Saka wasn't available.
Was it that much? I mean, I feel like every time we talk about him, the price kind of goes
78 million.
9,000 million pounds on Nani Madueke.
Point is, we made a significant investment. Whatever it was. If it wasn't 50, it was, it was
ballpark. Yeah.
I would argue that Saliba is going to miss more time this season than Saka missed last season. And I would argue that Konsa is a better player at his position than Nani Madueke is at his. And I would say that the investment you make in Konsa is a more important investment to make than the investment we made in Nani Madueke. And just a few things to think about. Look, I'm not saying the price is right, but I do think that there is a bit of recency bias of people watching the World Cup where I think he was kind of mediocre and judging him off that. But this is a guy who has played at a team that's been in and around the top 4 conversation for many years now. He's averaged 3,000 minutes starting at center back in the Premier League. He's in the 97th percentile for pass completion, 80th percentile for passes. So he's comfortable on the ball. He plays 60 passes a game at 96%, right? So we need someone who, like Saliba, can get on the ball and be confident on it. So he's a passer. He's an experienced defender. He's got Champions League experience. He averages 3,000 minutes a season in the league. He's right in the heart of his prime from a center back standpoint. I mean, 28 for a center back is probably closer to like 26 for a forward. And it is entirely possible that Saliba is not back until November or even December. You certainly don't want to rush him back. For a team that's identity is defense and whose options on the right-hand side of defense right now are Christian Mosquera, a very talented young player, but a young player who can't play every single game. Ben White, who is not a center back and has injury problems of his own. And Jurrien Timber, who is also not a center back and has injury problems of his own. I don't know what you think we should do at center back, but I would argue that whatever interest and urgency we showed in getting Nani Madueke in to cover for Saka, we should be showing similar interest and urgency to have a plan for the right-hand side of our defense. So whether that's Konsa or not, I think it is sensible for us to take that very seriously because that is the kind of injury that can derail a season before you get Saliba back. And it seems very avoidable as well because we know the injury is there. This isn't happening week 2 of the season. It's happened in the summer. We have time to respond to it.
You son of a bitch. I'm in.
There we go.
No, I mean, I like I said,
at what price?
It's the price point. But maybe that's the thing, you know, if you do need that player and you are trying to profile that kind of a player who's got all the experience that Konsa has, maybe that is the going rate in the Premier League. I just don't know.
Well, and it is the case that you have to also look at what are the alternatives. Like I wonder, you know, we say that's too expensive or it shouldn't cost that much. That's easy to debate. I mean, I don't think a lot of the players that have moved this summer should cost what they should cost. So there's clearly price inflation across the board. And I wouldn't want to buy Konsa at the expense of having the money to go after a really exciting forward. What I wouldn't want is to, not reinforce in that position and try to get through the first half of the season with Timber, White, and Mosquera. I don't think that is a sensible approach. And I wouldn't want to bring in someone who just isn't good enough. I mean, there's some analysis for you, but like...
No, I know what you mean, but like somebody who might need time to adapt or get used to the Premier League or... Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, there is no one we could buy that has the relevant experience at our level or at the level that he has that would probably be available to move. And if, by the way, if you're like, I don't care about the experience, I don't think he's any good, you're obviously entitled to that opinion. But I think some of that is just informed by what I think was a mediocre World Cup campaign. And I try not to use international football as the way I analyze a club level player.
Sure, that's fair enough. Well, we'll wait and see what happens with that position and that deal that Arsenal need to do at some point before the season begins, ideally. Yep. Any further takeaways on what we saw or what we didn't see or anything else from the Dublin game before we sort of kick on a bit here? I'm not sure there's too much, really. It was a bit of a damp squib in the end. All the young players that came on, good experience and good development for them. But Arsenal now will go back to London. I guess they're going back today on the training ground ahead of the game against Borussia Dortmund on Sunday. Then you've got Como in midweek. You've got the Community Shield, and then fucking bang, we're right back into the season. So I won't say the urgency, but the preseason needs to step up a bit, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say too is, and some of this, maybe watching the game from the level we were watching it, or just the fact that I'm not as good at watching games at the ground than I am on TV because I just have less experience. I might watch 6 games a season that way versus from the TV angle, but Mikel may be working on things that we're not aware he's working on, that he's testing out and trialing, and some of those things are going to not work, and then it doesn't look good on the pitch, and you think we look like we're a bit of a mess, but he may be trying things. I mean, Calafiori's positioning was very interesting to me. He was floating and roaming all over the pitch.
Well, he always does.
He always does, but like Kai Havertz, for example, there were times he was the deepest midfielder and Ethan was ahead of him out of possession. There were things that we were doing with Kai and Gyökeres' positioning that was really interesting and kind of hard to track from our viewing angle. And so I do sometimes wonder with preseason, in addition to it just being a fitness exercise, if there are things managers are working on and trialing that can make the performance look a little less coherent than it might otherwise, but we're not necessarily aware of. Because this thing of Kai and Gyökeres together, I don't know if that's something that Mikel really wants to try and lean into at the start of the season. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I'm not convinced that it totally works in every phase. Like there are times when it looks like it makes sense and there are other times where it looks a little bit of a mess to me.
No, I think it's down to personnel and who's available, right? So if you have Odegaard, Zubamendi, Marino, Eze all available to you, I don't think you play Havertz in that role. For me, Havertz and Gyökeres are kind of either or, unless you're in a situation where the game demands a goal and you're putting two strikers on. That's kind of the way I want to see those two used. I don't think that we're going to sign another striker this summer. I just don't believe that's the case. I could be wrong. You never know what might happen. The market shakes in weird ways and something might come along and there's an opportunity. So I think what we've got are two number 9s in Gyökeres and Havertz, and I think they're distinct in terms of how they play, and I think they're distinct in terms of who they should play against. You know, and that's not to be in any way critical of either of them. I just think Havertz is better suited to certain games. Gyökeres better suited to certain games. Lean into those strengths over the course of the season. And don't have Havertz and Gyökeres on the pitch together unless you absolutely have to, unless you're trying to, batter down the door to get an equalizer or a winning goal in a game where that really is necessary.
Yeah, and I would say a mixed game for Miles and Ethan, but I'm not sure that it helps Miles and Ethan when the third midfielder is Kai Havertz, and is someone that's not really a midfielder by trade necessarily. So just like we talk about center back partnerships are partnerships, midfields are very much about the relationships between the players on the pitch, and that's one that to me still looks like a work in progress. I'm very, very curious to see what happens with Ethan, right? I mean, that's the one that I think people have their eye on in terms of, can he really make the case for himself to have minutes and to be a part of this squad? Because if you think that Rice and Bruno are going to play a lot of minutes together during this season, there's an absolute logjam in that third midfield role. There's Eze and Odegaard and Kai at some level and Marino and Ethan and Miles can even play there a bit. And it is just natural that given Ethan's talent and given the interest in him that will exist, there's going to be a lot of people with their eyes on him in terms of whether there's a role for him this season. And I probably rate his talent more highly than many, but I do see the pathway being quite complicated for him.
No, I agree with that.
Shopify is your way to launch your business, okay? If I have built Shopify stores and the storefront looks so professional, it is so clean and elegant. It gives people the confidence to choose your products because they trust your site, which I really like. It allows you to meet the customer where they are, meet the person who wants your product where they are. Instagram integrations or Facebook or TikTok shop, wherever they are, you can meet that person there. You don't need to know code. You don't need to know tax law and shipping law and all that stuff. You just need to know how to build the site and then let the Shopify integrations take over. So it's very quick, it's very easy, it's very reliable. And with Shopify, nothing stands between your idea and a real business, so go make one. If you're ready to stop putting off your business and start hearing cha-ching, then you're ready for Shopify. Start your free trial at shopify.com/ArsenalVision today. That's shopify.com/ArsenalVision today. You heard that right. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now.
Let's talk then about the Vinicius Jr. situation and the development that took place yesterday. It was all very, not cloak and dagger, but, there's going to be a meeting. And then we're sort of, oh, look, they've come out of the meeting. And it's sort of like electing a new pope. Has there been white smoke? What is the white smoke from Madrid about Vinicius Jr.? So here's the sort of the state of play via David Ornstein. Real Madrid raise contract offer to Vinicius Jr. Proposal said to reflect 26-year-old's importance to Real Madrid and the project. Decision time for the Brazil international. Renewal which is with Real Madrid, obviously. Await free agency next summer, club want to avoid, obviously, or pursue Arsenal opportunities. So that's kind of where we are. I don't think this is necessarily an unexpected development, because loads of people were saying, Real Madrid, everyone's like, they're not going to increase their offer. Real Madrid are fixed. That's it. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And then they did it. And I don't think that's necessarily unexpected, to the extent that I think it sort of leaves them in a better position on both sides, right? Where he's got very good agents and they've negotiated this potential rise with Real Madrid. It also, in light of this, gives them greater leverage if they do want to pursue the Arsenal opportunity, in inverted commas, to say, well, look, Real Madrid are giving us this. And, maybe you can, I know you've gone far and you're trying very hard to, but, what more can you do here? What more were you surprised by that development yesterday?
So maybe I'm an idiot and your mileage may vary on that, but I was surprised. I think my optimism that we could get this deal done was based on an intuition that was based on nothing, that Madrid wouldn't raise their offer, that he had demands may be too strong, but he had requests of Madrid, like a signing on bonus, a renewal bonus, essentially, which the reporting was that Madrid don't do that. They don't want to do that, that he wanted an improved image rights deal. They'd only ever broken for Mbappe and they didn't want to do that, wouldn't do that he wanted to be paid similar to Mbappe and they didn't regard him as, deserving that level and not wanting to go to that level. All the way that things were reported. I had this sort of thing of like, do you hire Jose Mourinho if you really want to keep Vini?
No, I get that. Yeah.
And do you want to have Vini tied to this project for another 4 or 5 seasons at Galactico wages? Or is there a future for Madrid where they want to shift Mbappe left, they want to bring in a Hollander, they want to revitalize this project in a different way under a new manager and go in a different direction? And so in my mind, I thought, if you're Real Madrid, you can't be seen to be pushing Vini Jr. out of your club. He's a global superstar. But I thought that the offer that they had on the table was likely as far as they'd go. And what gave me a sense that we could get him was the belief that if our offer was better, Rock Nation may say to Vini, you should go try this new thing. This is a much better offer. Once Real Madrid, I guess, capitulated and decided, no, we can't just let this guy walk out of our club, and have raised their offer to something that, at least according to David Ornstein, reflects his importance to the club, then I think it's hard to see, because I've just not seen stars at the peak of their powers leave Real Madrid. That's not something I've seen before.
Are they, is there a possibility that, and I know the sort of behind the scenes, the whispers are that like it's more likely he stays with Real Madrid than comes to Arsenal. Whether he stays at Real Madrid and signs a new contract or not, that's a different question, right? But is there a chance that Real Madrid are playing sort of 3D chess here, saying that, well, even if we up the offer, he can take it, or we can demand a little bit more from Arsenal, knowing that Arsenal are going to have to push the boat out even further if they want to sign this guy and pay a transfer fee, whatever that might be. Listen, hopium, copium, whatever you want to call it. I think it's. I do trust the information that we're receiving, and I do trust the people who have that information, who behind the scenes are saying, it feels like it's going back the other way, having been a bit more encouraging from an Arsenal perspective. So I don't want to downplay that or make it seem like I'm not believing the information that we're hearing. Nevertheless, I still kind of think that this is still a relatively, potentially a fluid situation where there isn't anything quite set in stone yet. And by virtue of the sheer size of this potential renewal or this deal, that there's a possibility that it can go back the other way. Does that make any sense to you? Or do you think now, well, we had the chance, it's kind of gone, we need to think about what next?
It makes sense. But if you're trying to think probabilistically, right, just think about the dynamics of a negotiation. At the start of the negotiation, what was reported is they were quite far apart. They were far apart. And in any negotiation, if you're far apart, the only way a deal is going to happen is if both parties move, right? Is if you move to meet me, I move to meet you. from what I've seen in negotiation just over life, if both parties start to move, a deal eventually gets done. Where deals don't get done is if one party draws a line in the sand and says, this is where we are and we're not moving. And the reporting early on was that Madrid had made their offer. It was the best offer they were going to make. They weren't going to move. And in my mind, that's when deals don't get done. Once both parties start coming to the table and move their offer and improve their offer, that tends, in my experience, in my mind, to indicate that both parties want to find a way to get the deal done. And if Vini wants to stay and Madrid are now willing to move and try to meet him to a place where he can accept what they're offering, probabilistically speaking, I think the most likely outcome, as they say, is, does it mean there is no chance this turns? Of course not. It could turn. Arsenal could improve their offer even more, and Vini could decide that he wants to be the guy instead of competing to be the guy with the guys. Now, whether you think he'd be the guy at Arsenal is a different question. But so I think, yes, of course, it could still turn, but probabilistically speaking, based on the motions of this negotiation right now, it feels like it's heading towards a renewal. So
there will be people who say, and maybe with some justification, but I think it's an interesting talking point, that Arsenal have been a pawn in a game between Vinicius Jr. and Real Madrid. And I think you could make that argument, right? You could say, what's a way to get a better deal where you want to stay is by introducing a third party. Then the question becomes, like, were Arsenal naive or stupid to even pursue this, to allow themselves to be used? I don't think so. I don't believe that to be true. I think Arsenal, if they thought they had a chance to sign Vinicius Jr., should have taken that chance. Because we've talked about Arsenal as a team that, or as a club maybe, that needs to demonstrate the right amount of ambition in the transfer market. So we've done that. And we've done it recognizing that it was going to be very complicated and very difficult. And there was always the possibility that Arsenal's interest allowed Vinicius Jr. to get a deal more aligned with what he wants from Real Madrid, because that's just kind of how it works, right? But should we have not done something because that was a possibility? I don't think so. No. I think if you really, really want to change the perception of your club, to increase the quality of your team, you have to take any potential opportunity to do that. And Arsenal were prepared to go a long way financially and prepared to deal with the consequences of that financial deal in order to bring this guy in. But that idea that we've just been played, we've just been used, they've just sort of had us over a barrel, and Real Madrid and Vinicius will come out of this laughing on the other side. I get it. I understand why people might think that way, but I also think you've got to go for a player like this. If you feel like you can do it, the wrong thing to do is not go for it. Yeah, I think this is just an opportunity to criticize the club if that's how you're so inclined. And I understand if you're frustrated and we haven't necessarily been as good at buying attacking players as we might like, and you may have felt this was never realistic. And if you felt this was never realistic, then you wonder why we wasted our time with it. If you've just won the Premier League and you've made it to the Champions League final and you've been one of the best clubs in Europe for multiple years and you're trying to improve, and the biggest area you need to improve is bringing in better talent in the attack, there's not a huge universe of players that do that. And this is one of those players. I mean, going into the summer, what were we saying? If you could get any player in the world, well, we need a left winger. Well, any player in the world who would be? Well, Vini, but that's not realistic. Well, you have to be in for that player if you have an opportunity to get him. If you're Arsenal Football Club, you have to. It's a very difficult transfer. It was always going to be difficult. If you don't go for it, you are not showing proper ambition. And I think there are clubs that get used in the media to get a player a better deal. I think those are cases where the sort of stalking horse bidder, so to speak, where their interest isn't authentic. It isn't real. It's being portrayed in the media to try to get an outcome. I think this interest was real. I think the club have been in contact with Rock Nation. I think that this was a very serious negotiation. All the reporting indicates that, and reporting from legitimate sources, not just sort of ITKs on social media. And I think, look, if you're trying to buy a house and someone else is trying to buy the house and you wind up having to pay a little bit more and you get the house, was the other person used? No, they did help the seller get a better deal, but you both wanted the house and the person who had the better offer got the house. Like, we may have gotten Vini more money at Madrid if that's what happens.
But I don't think that's why we were involved. I think this was an authentic effort to buy the player where the player and his agent were authentically considering a move. And had Real Madrid not improved their offer, I think he would be at Arsenal. So, no, I don't think you can demand of the club to show ambition and to go for the best players in world football and then complain when we don't get them, because it's very hard to get those players. I mean, Manchester City tried to get Declan Rice and they didn't get him. Were they used in the negotiation with West Ham? No, I think they wanted Declan Rice and we got him. That's just not always going to be the outcome.
Yeah. Then the question, let's just sort of make the crazy assumption that he does stay at Real Madrid, however that happens, either with a new deal or with the possibility of leaving on a Bosman, which, is not beyond the realms of possibility either. It's a risky one for a player because you pick up an injury and then all of a sudden you're kind of fucked. But anyway, let's make that crazy assumption that he stays at Real Madrid. The question becomes for Arsenal, what now? Because I do think, for all the justification that we've made for going for Vinicius Jr., you have a situation to manage as a football club, because that kind of a deal raises expectations, raises hopes. You don't just do deals to keep fans happy. We all know that. You do deals like this to try and make your team better. Nevertheless, people will be disappointed if you don't get this player, because the pursuit of this guy isn't just because he's available. It's because you want to make your team better. And I think anybody listening to this could reasonably argue that there is significant room for improvement in Arsenal's forward line.
Of course.
Right? Going after a player of the quality of Vinicius Jr. is also tacit admission that, despite the fact this is an opportunity, you're saying we have identified this area of our team as in need of not urgent improvement, but we recognize that that's where we can improve. And we're also willing, in order to make that improvement, as I said, pay the big money on the transfer fee, pay the big money on the wages, shatter your wage structure, shatter your image rights structure. There's a talk or a report there that they were going to give Vini 100% of his image rights as a way of incentivizing him to come into the club, right? So Arsenal's willingness to go as far as they can financially is an indication that they know they need to do something in this part of the team. So how do you manage that? We've seen the club pivot before. Is it good enough now to say, well, we couldn't get that player and we don't really want to spend that kind of money on anybody else, and that's understandable. You don't spend that money on anybody else. But is it now incumbent on Arsenal to demonstrate the ability to pivot as we have in the past? Because Vinicius or nothing doesn't feel like a smart strategy. And I know the other night you made the point on stage at our live event in Dublin that you think our squad is really, really good. And I agree with that our squad is really, really good. But if you go for Vinicius and don't get him and then don't get anybody else, do you leave yourself open to hiding for nothing when in the first few weeks of the seasons goals are a bit hard to come by and everyone goes, well, you know what you should have done? Yeah.
I mean, look, first of all, you have to be able to distinguish your emotional reaction to this from your intellectual reaction. I am heartbroken if we're not going to get Vini Jr. because that was very exciting and I allowed myself to believe, and I don't think without justification, that it could happen. So yeah, that sucks. Intellectually, to your point, right now I think we're betting odds favorites to win the Premier League, right? We have a very, very, very good squad, and I don't know that squad is any worse. I would argue it's quite a bit better with the addition of Bruno Guimaraes, and now has easily the best midfield in the league, if not the best in the world. We're better, and we're going to compete to win and most likely be favored to win the Premier League when the season starts that Friday night against Coventry. But that doesn't mean you don't do everything you can to not only try to win the league, but try to win the other competitions. And Mikel Arteta spoke about that. And they asked him, is your goal this season not just to win the Premier League, but to win the European Championship? He said, yes, we want to win all the trophies available to us. I don't think the attack is sufficient to feel confident that we are doing everything in our power to win those trophies. Look, I've said this before, and if there's one thing I'll do is I'll always say it again.
That's for sure.
71 goals, in my opinion, won't win the league again.
No.
And I think the firepower that we have offensively is not sufficient to want to try to go win the Champions League, because ultimately, when you need that goal to win you a tournament, I'm not sure we have the firepower for it. Now, if you offered me Vini Jr. or our star players to just be fit all season, I might pick the latter. Because honestly, if Bukayo Saka comes back fit, and if Kai Havertz is fit, and if Martin Odegaard is fit, right, we're going to look a lot better. We are still thinking of the Arsenal that had a lot of Nani Madueke, Gabriel Martinelli, and Victor Gyökeres front threes during the run-in. And that's not something we want to see again.
No.
So, but let me be clear. We should be signing another forward and a left-sided forward and a player that can be the quote-unquote first choice there. What I don't want us to do is just fire the money cannons that were aimed at Vini at whoever the hell else is out there and overuse our financial resources on a player that doesn't warrant that.
Like you don't want another, with all due respect, another Nani Madueke, right? Who was pretty big money, 7 trillion pounds we paid for Nani Madueke.
70 trillion.
70 trillion pounds we paid for Nani Madueke, who, played a role, but didn't necessarily deliver what you expect a player in that position to deliver in terms of goals and assists.
Like what I'm saying, okay, we were willing to go to 120 million transfer fee and 500 grand a week. Do we want to go to 100 million and 350 a week for a Nico Williams? No, I'm not sure that we should now take this pent up enthusiasm to spend big on that star forward and aim it at someone who is not at the level, because then that's financial firepower you can't use to go get an actual star player when that player becomes available. So as much as I wanted Vini, and as much as I think we should still try to find a solution for the front three, the players that I would be very excited about joining are not in huge supply. The names are pretty familiar.
No, that's true. There isn't a lot out there. I just feel like that pursuit of Vinicius Jr., whether it turns out to be unsuccessful or not, and it does look a bit more like not, it raises expectations. And we've said the decision to sign players is not about keeping fans happy. As much as we're all invested in transfers, as much as we all want to see those things happen, the optics aren't great. If you're saying we're going to go for this, and then come the end of August, even with justification, intellectual justification like you've made, if nothing else happens, that has a ripple effect, I think, through the fan base in terms of how people feel, rightly or wrongly, because I think there is a big midfield upgrade. Like Christian Norgard out, Bruno Guimaraes in is a significant midfield upgrade, right? And I also take your point about if Saka's fit and if Saka gets back to his best, we've got one of the best players.
A Vini level player of our own at home.
Not quite Vini level, I think, but at his best, he was in that conversation for sure. But we haven't seen that best since that hamstring injury. So I understand why people would be skeptical about that. I do get it, but we know from experience, even last season, not just online either. I think, you could feel it sometimes in the stadium, that the nervousness that permeated through the fan base for all the reasons we've talked about and explained. And ultimately we got ourselves over the line and won the Premier League and we're champions, and it's fucking great. But you could feel that. And I just wonder if you run the risk of that dynamic being part of our season, that every time we don't score a goal, or every game where we struggle to score a goal, it becomes you shoulda. And I think we do understand how difficult it is to find those players.
I think where it's even more about, so let's say we were never linked with Vini Jr. And someone just said to you, this summer Arsenal are going to buy this guy, Christos Solis. They're going to buy a good, competent defender. We don't know who that is, and hopefully that does happen. And they're going to buy Bruno Guimaraes. How would you have ranked that summer? I would have had that as a 6.5 out of 10. I still, or maybe a 7, but short that attacking player we need. But where I think the criticism I'm not prepared to levy at the club about the Vini pursuit, I am prepared to say, look, it seems pretty clear from reporting that Mikel Arteta wanted Morgan Rogers, rated Morgan Rogers, and believed he could be the guy for us. Now, you may say we were right not to go to the money for that player. fine. That it was an overpay, don't get that money, fine. But that was the target. We wanted him. We did not get him. He went to Chelsea. Then we pivoted to a very hard to get target. And it appears, as of the time of the recording this, that we're not going to get that player. It will be starting to build up a bit of a catalog of key targets Mikel Arteta identified that were not delivered. And the track record, at least in attack, for recruiting from outside of the club has not been particularly strong. Now, we still won the league. We still made the Champions League final. We're still very, very good. Where we've recruited in other areas of the pitch, midfield and defense in particular, we've been sensational. But the next sort of final piece to go to that level, Mikel keeps talking about wanting to take the club to a new level. I think you have to have stars in attack to go to that level. I think that is the thing that brings in the new enthusiasm, brings in the excitement, gets people fired up. I said this at the Sugar Club the other night, but like, if you said to me, what are the three hallmarks of a legendary manager, right? One is they win shit, and Mikel Arteta has now done that, and he had done that before with the FA Cup, but he's now won something big, so he's on the start of that trajectory. Two is they get some of the biggest, best players to play for them, right? Declan Rice, I think, would be in that category. Maybe Bruno Guimaraes. We have some that we made ourselves in our academy. Yeah. Fine. But three is that they also play football that captures the imagination and delights the fan base, and that the fans say, I loved showing up to watch Mikel Arteta's Arsenal. And I think that's been more mixed. There have been times, certainly, we scored 91 goals 3 seasons ago. That was sensational. I am sure Mikel Arteta would like Arsenal to be able to be more dynamic and go up a level in terms of the attacking football we play. And that I only think you get by bringing in elite talent. So that's a long way of saying, even without the Vini pursuit, there was a need to bring in, to elevate the level in the front three. We have not done that yet. And that, for me, would be a huge miss if we don't accomplish it. That's kind of where I am with this. And that's kind of what I've been alluding to in this conversation. I do wonder, if the Morgan Rogers situation was informed by the Vinicius Jr. opportunity, if you like, because it looked like Rogers was going to come and then it all went quiet and then Chelsea swooped in and hijacked. But maybe that's because we decided, well, if you can sign Morgan Rogers or you can sign Vinicius Jr., who do you go for? I mean, for me, there's no question, right? No question. I think the spending on Morgan Rogers would have been an interesting talking point. I don't think it would have been a slam dunk. He's the right guy at that price for that position.
No, absolutely.
Whereas Vini is a slam dunk, the right guy for that position.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, listen, we'll have to wait and see what they do or how things develop. Time of recording is about 11 a.m. on Thursday morning. So, by the time this evening comes around, there could be something else happening. I just think that the club need to think about this very, very seriously. That the next level of improvement, as we've said, is in the attack, and that kind of star quality, however difficult it is to find, you've really got to push the boat out to try and do it. They've done that or are doing that with Vinicius. I don't think they can just stop if Vinicius doesn't happen. So,
is there a name that, like, one or two names, like since it doesn't look like it's going to be Vinicius, do you have a sense of who it would be that would excite you, where you'd say, yep, we pivoted correctly. This was a good pivot.
That's a really great question. I mean, the one that springs to mind is Julian Alvarez, who I think would take the attack to a different level.
You'd still be talking about a Martinelli and Soli's left-hand side, one or the other, because I don't think he's coming in to play off the left.
No. Yeah, I think that one's really complicated as well. So I understand it. But, once you sort of take the lid off the Pandora's box, so to speak, of Vinicius Jr. or a player like Vinicius Jr., it's out there. It's in the wild.
Would you try to pull a Chelsea to Liverpool with a Bradley Barcola? Is that a name that you think you...
Not at the money that PSG are looking for. I mean, I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's quite at the level. But then I find it really difficult to get a true sense of what anybody is worth these days, because the transfer fees are so inflated that, we're sitting here not justifying, but talking ourselves into a 60-70 million pound move for Ezri Konsa. And I get it, but that's also nuts.
It's completely nuts. Of course it is. It's just, you don't get to go into the store and complain that the prices are too high and walk out with the merchandise. The prices may be too high, but then you have to walk out of the store.
Well, you could also shoplift.
Well, that's true. So you're saying just send in a team, take the player,
Exactly.
bring him to some black site, hide him for a little while, give him a haircut,
bit of plastic surgery, and then come back. Hey, we found this amazing new talent somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, listen,
Vinicius Jr.
Nobody will ever know. My name is Mr. Snrub. Okay, listen, we're going to leave it there because we have got a bit of traveling to do. We're going to see a little bit of Ireland over the next couple of days, so we're going to get ourselves on the road shortly. I'll let you do what you need to do with your bit of this podcast, but for now, Elliot, thanks very much, and I'll see you downstairs.
Sounds good. All right, no big finish here. Just going to say, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening. We will have our normal podcast back on Monday. We'll have all the patron stuff you expect the rest of the week. In fact, I think Friday Night Clive with Tim and Clive will be on tomorrow, and then the Instant Reaction Sunday and the main pod Monday. So we love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Dortmund 0.